Steelers Nation, it's time to have an honest chat about the Pittsburgh Steelers defense here in 2025 after that, frankly, unacceptable performance versus the Cincinnati Bengals this Thursday night. And I think it's time to kind of sit down, talk about some of the issues that this defense is having, have an honest conversation about that, and then also look at some of the areas that I think that this coaching staff can address over the mini bye week to make this defense better, because I do think that the talent is here to make one of the best defenses in the National Football League. It's just about finding that right mix. Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. If you guys want in-depth, nuanced, nerdy, kind of in-depth content on the Pittsburgh Steelers like this every single day, that's what we provide for you guys for free here on Steelers Talk. There's a reason why we are the largest individually run Steelers news channel anywhere on YouTube. We are the only one with over 100,000 subscribers, so make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already, to join us here on Steelers Talk. Now, let's talk about this, all right? What ended up turning the game last night, in my opinion, in terms of the game and why things kind of went off the rails. Because remember, the Steelers stopped the Bengals for the first two drives of the game. The defense was looking like it looked against Cleveland and it looked against Minnesota, and it looked like that defense was playing pretty decently those first two drives, and then boom, you only force a punt one other time for the rest of the game, and they get a bunch of scoring drives, and they end up putting up over 30 on you. I think the big thing and the big swing in that football game, especially because it's a Thursday night short week, was that stretch between that first touchdown drive that the Cincinnati Bengals went on in the middle of the second quarter to the middle of the third quarter when they went up 10 points, all right? During that stretch, there was 15 minutes and 50 seconds of game clock. All right, during that stretch, the Cincinnati Bengals had 33 plays to the Steelers' 8, and they possessed the football for 14 minutes and nearly 14 and a half minutes of possession versus the Steelers' 2.5 minutes, because, of course, the Steelers threw those two interceptions pretty quickly in those two drives, and then the Bengals got the ball out of halftime, so they really controlled the football for a very large portion of time. And fatigue was always going to be a factor in this football game, guys. It always is on Thursday night. Usually you want to get a better rotation going on Thursdays because these players just played on Sunday. They haven't had a lot of rest and recovery time and all that stuff. But when your defense is on the field for 14 and a half minutes over almost a 16-minute stretch in a ball game, they're going to get gassed, guys. And it's almost impossible for the defense to stay fresh if that's the case. So, obviously the answer to that is just, make a stop on those first couple of drives, and then, you have a sustained drive on offense. You don't turn the football over. It was just a series of very unfortunate events for the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially in the setting that they were in. A Thursday night football game on the road against a divisional opponent in a tough place to play. And, the defense was simply gassed in that second half, guys. You could tell. Once they went up 10 after that point, even though the Steelers were consistently putting points on the board there in that second half, consistently scoring touchdowns, that defense, you could just tell, was not moving at the same speed that they were in the first half because they were just on the field for so many plays. And you could just tell that, attrition set in, and that obviously that's not an excuse, and that doesn't give the Pittsburgh Steelers defense a pass in this football game. What they put on tape in this game was frankly unacceptable, and we're going to be talking about a lot of the issues that the Pittsburgh Steelers have on defense from a general perspective, not just in this football game, but just in general this season. And, it goes far beyond just the fact that they were fatigued in this game. But coming up here on Steelers Talk, we're going to go over what went wrong versus the Bengals. And then also later in the show here, we'll talk about some of the solutions that I would prescribe to Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin to fix some of the issues that the Steelers defense is going through right now. But before we get into the rest of today's show, let me know down there in the comments section, who carries the most blame for the defensive collapse versus the Cincinnati Bengals on Thursday Night Football? You let me know down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Prize Picks. And while I tell you about our sponsor here, let me know down there in the comment section, what's one person that has the most blame for the defensive collapse last night? And with that, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Prize Picks. And you and I, we both make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Football season is finally here, and you better believe I'll be getting my Prize Picks lineups in all season long. Prize Picks is super simple to play. You just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. Prize Picks also puts their users first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Prize Picks also offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. And a new feature from Prize Picks that I absolutely love is injury reboots. If one of your players leaves the game in the first half and does not return, Prize Picks will not count it as a loss. So for this week's action here in Week 7, I'm taking the more on Dak Prescott passing yards, the more on Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt rushing yards, and the more on Jaden Daniels rushing and passing yards combined. You guys can download the app today to get a lineup in and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup this weekend. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on the free Prize Picks app today. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, so now let's get into my takeaways from the film from this unacceptable defensive performance on Thursday Night Football. First up here, too many heroes in run defense. And what I mean by this is that there's too many players in the Steelers' run fit that are abandoning their responsibilities to try and shoot a gap into the backfield and try to make a big play for a TFL. Okay, and I think that when it comes to run defense, everything is about gap structure and integrity and making sure everyone's in the right place at the right time. No one's getting blasted out of their particular gap, forcing a big hole. And unfortunately, last night, guys like Chuck Clark, guys like Patrick Queen, guys like Peyton Wilson at times were just out of position, leading to wide open holes for Chase Brown to exploit. And the team that came into the night dead last in rushing offense ended up having multiple explosive runs and had almost 100 yards rushing at halftime, all right, let alone the entire game. So, when defenders try and, be a hero and they try to abandon their responsibility to try and make a big play, that leaves opportunities for the offense to have big holes and to get explosive plays. And that's exactly what we saw from this Steelers run defense. Last night. And the truth of the matter is, guys, if the run defense for the Steelers stinks, the entire defense is going to stink. It's the foundation of this defense. They want to get these teams into third and very long situations, and they just weren't really able to do that. Joe Flacco and the Bengals offense was very, very efficient, whether it was with the ground game with Chase Brown or Samaje Perine, or whether it was the short passing game. They were just consistently taking a profit and consistently moving the football, and they were very rarely moving backwards, which is really what the Steelers want to do. They want to force the issue. They want to get these teams to be moving backwards to force third and longs, which would, of course, accentuate the strength of this defense, which is the pass rush, but they weren't really able to do that. So if you can get the run game fixed, you guys, we've seen it. We've seen this defense play better. When they've stopped the run, this defense, is pretty productive, and they do a good job preventing points, forcing turnovers, getting off the field, that sort of stuff. But that just wasn't the case this week versus Cincinnati. And moving forward, the message from the coaching staff has to be, just do your effing job, all right? Just fill your gap, all right? You don't have to be a hero, all right? You don't have to go out there and make the big play. Just do your assignment, fill your run fit, and just do your job, all right? If you do those things, we will be successful. And sure, will we give up maybe a 2-yard gain versus, having a -2 or -3 TFL and for you to stuff your stat sheet? Sure, but at the same time, we're not going to give up as many 20-yard runs or 30-yard runs and, these explosive plays that shift the momentum in the football game. So that has to be the message this week and moving forward, in my opinion, is to be gap sound. Now, the bright side, guys, is that we have seen this run defense be pretty darn good, all right? In the 3 games previous to this game versus the Bengals, versus the Patriots, versus the Vikings, and versus the Browns, 3 teams that, can run the football a little bit. They did a really good job, stopping those teams and, preventing them from having big gains and, keeping a lid on the running game, which, of course, led to more opportunities to rush the passer and more third and long situations. So if the Steelers can just get that right, that is a foundational kind of focal point that the Steelers need to get right in the future if this defense is going to hit its potential. But then, talking about the pass rush, a lot of people are blaming the pass rush for this game, saying, they're ghosts and, they're invisible and all this stuff. But there really wasn't any time for the pass rush to get home. Joe Flacco, to his credit, got the ball out extremely quickly. had answers to everything the Steelers were throwing at him schematically, and it was an average of 2.21 seconds was the average time to throw from Joe Flacco in this football game. And, obviously that is extremely quick and that is very efficient. And, if you're a pass rusher and you only have less than 2.5 seconds to get to a quarterback, you're probably not going to get to him, right? So the Steelers secondary and the coverage needs to do a better job. And we'll talk about some of the problem areas in the coverage here in just a second. But if you're blaming the pass rush, for me, it wasn't really on the pass rush in this one, guys. I actually thought that the defensive line in terms of the pass rush looked pretty good. Cam Hayward had a lot of close calls in this one, some very quick wins, but Flacco just got the ball out fast. Nick Herbig was his usual disruptive self. Alex Highsmith had the most pressures out of anybody on the team last night, and Keanu Benton got a sack as well. I will say the one person on the defensive line and on the pass rush that underwhelmed for me was TJ Watt. He got more true one-on-one opportunities than he usually gets, and it was against a young right tackle in Amarius Mims, who's had his struggles in this league, and TJ still wasn't able to make that much of an impact. Now, like I said, it's tough for TJ to get to Joe Flacco when he's getting rid of the ball as quickly as he was, even in a one-on-one situation. But you still, expect, if TJ's going to get more one-on-one opportunities, he's still going to make a bigger impact on the game than he ended up actually having. But a big issue with this football game, guys, from a game planning perspective, from an adjustment standpoint, in my opinion, from a game planning perspective, was that Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin didn't double Jamar Chase enough. All right, they doubled him a couple of times. It's not like they never did it, but they definitely didn't do it enough, and Cincinnati certainly identified that early on in this game, and then they decided after that second drive in this football game to really force feed him the football, whether it was screens, whether it was slants, whether it was, fades to the end zone, whatever the case may be. Jamar Chase had 16 catches on 23 targets. Honestly, he should have had more catches than the 16 he got. He had a couple drops, but he finishes up with 161 yards, over a first down per reception and a touchdown, and he just absolutely chopped up the Steelers defense. And, Pittsburgh's plan coming in is what they've been saying this entire time. Ever since they trade for Jalen Ramsey, what have we heard from Mike Tomlin? We specifically got Jalen Ramsey to man up teams like the Bengals. All right? So they've been saying it for months now. We're going to play man coverage against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. All right? So, Jamar Chase said it himself in his post-game press conference. Yeah, we knew exactly what they're going to run. And what he means by that is I knew they were going to play a lot of man-to-man coverage on me, and they came ready with a bunch of rub concepts, and then plain and simply, Jamar Chase just cooked the guys that the Steelers had against him, whether it was press, whether it was off, whether it was zone, whether it was man, it did not matter. And because of that, the proper adjustment that Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin should have made was to double the guy, all right? But they really didn't do that on a consistent basis throughout this game. And then, it wasn't just man coverage, guys. When they did go to zone and they did throw in Tampa, they did throw in a fire zone, they did throw in some cover 3 buzz stuff. It wasn't any better, all right? Joe Flacco was still able to go 1, 2, 3 within rhythm, and then Jamar Chase was open against zone as well. And of course, Joe is a established quarterback that's been in this league for a long time. He can pick apart a defense with his mind, and he certainly did that versus the Pittsburgh Steelers last night. And if you don't believe me, man, just take a look at the amount of coverages that Jamar Chase caught a football against last night versus the Bengals. He caught balls against 8 different types of coverages. Now, man coverage was certainly pretty heavy here, okay? Cover 1 blitz 5 times. Cover 2 man, he caught 3 balls against cover 2 man, all right? So man was certainly not working. But then also zone coverages like cover 3 buzz, quarters, which is a man match coverage. You got Tampa 2, cover 1 robber, another man coverage. You got cover 3 fire zone, and you got 2 buzz man. So that all culminates there in 18 catches. And a lot of that is man coverage, but there's also zone coverage mixed in there. But, plain simply what this comes down to me is Tomlin's hubris, okay? Coach T thought, that Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay, and Joey Porter Jr. were good enough players to go up against maybe the best receiver in the game today, one-on-one with no safety help over the top in terms of a double team, and hold up. And he was just wrong about that. And then, and listen, man, if you go into the game with that plan, that's fine. But, if it's not working, and it's clearly not working, you got to make the adjustment. And the team just didn't do that. And they should have consistently double-teamed him at least at the start of the second half, but they continued to not do that. He was continuously getting one-on-ones, and he was continuously getting open because of that. So the Steelers, the next time they play Cincinnati in just a few weeks, I really hope Mike Tomlin watches the film and realizes, yeah, we're not good enough in the secondary to go one-on-one versus Jamar Chase. And I hope they come together with a much better plan in the future to really handle the big-time talent that is Jamar Chase, who really killed this defense this week. But I was also really disappointed specifically with Jalen Ramsey on tape, man. And it wasn't just what he did against Jamar Chase, where he got toasted time and time and time again, but he was also getting toasted against T. Higgins and, others. And, it just wasn't a good night for number 5, unfortunately. And I think what we learned last night, guys, is that Ramsey's just not a high-end man cornerback anymore on the outside. All right, back in his prime when he was, say, in Jacksonville, he was one of the best pure press man, lock him down, number 1 man-to-man corners in the National Football League. It's pretty apparent at this point he's no longer that caliber of guy. Now, I still think he can be a very good player for this Steelers defense, and we've seen him do a lot of good stuff for this team. All right, but he doesn't have the juice athletically to be able to stick with these guys in press man coverage. We saw that last night. I think he's much more suited to play, in the nickel and play at free safety and play with leverage and all these different things and allow himself to watch the eyes of the quarterback and play instinctively, because Jalen Ramsey is still an absolute dog that can make these high-end plays. But, in terms of just one-on-one man coverage, I'm going to lock you down on an island, I think we saw last night he's not capable of doing that anymore, and I hope they stop using him as an outside man cornerback in weeks to come. And then also Darius Slay, unfortunately, is very apparently slowing down, and I think it's because of age. And listen, man, Father Time comes for all of us, and plain simply, Slay is the oldest starting cornerback in the National Football League by a wide margin. There's only a handful of corners that are still kicking out there on NFL rosters that are above the age of 30, and most of those guys don't play a whole lot, and the ones that do aren't very good. And Darius Slay, it's very admirable that he's been a very serviceable player for as long as he has been. He was a contributor to a Super Bowl champion team last year, but frankly, Slay fit inside that Vic Fangio defense in Philly because he was able to play a lot of off coverage, a lot of quarters, a lot of cover 6, and he wasn't really asked to go in man coverage all that often, and that's exactly what he's being asked to do here in Pittsburgh, and it's just not working out, man. It kind of feels like Terrell Austin wanted him because he was good as a man corner when he had him in Detroit, and he still thought he was that guy. But at this point in his career, Slay at best is an off-zone cover corner in that regard, and he's just not a man-to-man press dude. And, we've seen him, have mental mistakes. He's had a number of blown coverages, and he's just getting toasted in man coverage, man. Him going up against Jamar Chase, it just wasn't even fair on the tape last week. And, honestly, I'm even looking at potentially even sitting him down in favor of Brandon Echols, who just brings more juice athletically than Slay does, especially if the Steelers want to keep playing man coverage. But then Patrick Queen, I think he looked a bit lost in pass coverage last night, man. There's a couple instances where he just wasn't in the right place at the right time, and I think that this has been a problem with Queenie for a while. Now, I want to make abundantly clear, I think he's really freaking good as a run defender and as a blitzer, and I think he has his moments, especially in man coverage, as a pass defender. But in zone coverage, man, he can get lost at times. And it certainly seems like teams make a concerted effort, especially when they identify the Steelers are playing zone, to target his zone because he can get lost and he's easily manipulatable and all these different things. So, Patrick Queen, I would say, I'm happy he's here, but he is a little bit of a liability in coverage at times. And I think that that's fair to point out. But, I think that, he is a net positive for this team, but certainly in pass coverage, he can have some lapses. But then, another thing here, guys, and this one really pisses me off, if I'm being completely honest with you. Why the hell was Chuck Clark starting for this defense last night? I mean, this starting secondary is all healthy. All right, Chuck Clark was brought in as kind of like a Band-Aid, kind of backup piece, and because some injuries had been beginning to happen during camp. But no, everyone was healthy, and Clark was playing at a starting level pace, and he wasn't playing like a starter. I mean, last week, he goes from being a healthy scratch versus the Cleveland Browns. He doesn't even get a helmet, and by the way, the Steelers had their best defensive performance of the season with him not even seeing the field, to now getting 43 snaps and a starting workload versus the Cincinnati Bengals on a short week. How the hell does that happen? I mean, honestly, like, what is the thinking there, Mike Tomlin? What is the thinking there, Taylor Lawson, to start this guy who has had some really bad tape out there through these first several weeks? Like, there was a reason why, and I was fully supportive of him not getting a helmet versus Cleveland. Now he's getting a helmet, and not only that, but he's getting 43 snaps. By the way, he's over doubling Juan Thornhill's snap production in this game, and Juan Thornhill made a really nice play on Jamar Chase. I think Thornhill's played very aggressively and pretty darn well to start this season. Yet for some reason, this team seems to like Chuck Clark more and trust him more. And then you got Jabril Peppers on the roster, fully healthy, ready to go, ready to help your defense. And no, we want to play slow, old Chuck Clark that can't tackle? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, guys. It just doesn't. And, Clark might have been the worst defender for the Pittsburgh Steelers last night. All right, and I'm talking about Jalen Ramsey, who was getting cooked time and time again by Jamar Chase. Same thing goes for Darius Slay. We've talked about those guys. There were some bad defenders for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I know Clark made a nice TFL on kind of like on a swing play early in the game, but he missed a big tackle, or missed tackle, I should say, on T. Higgins when he was playing quarters, which led to a touchdown that gave the Bengals the lead in this ball game. He missed multiple tackles in this game. We talked about the run defense and people trying to shoot gaps to try and be a hero. That was Chuck Clark throughout the entirety of this football game, consistently out of position. So I just don't get why this team and this coaching staff likes him so much and puts him out there so much. He's not a good football player. He misses tackles. He's slow. I would much rather see Juan Thornhill or Jabril Peppers get more time, and I think he needs to be benched from now on, man. Like, I think after that performance, there's just no other way to look at that film and come to any other conclusion. That Chuck Clark is just not a very good football player. It's nice to have him on the roster in case there's injuries, but when you're fully healthy, there's no fucking excuse for this guy to be out there as a starting safety for this defense. And then, getting to the pass rush again here, guys, not enough snaps for Nick Herbig. Talking about snap count here. I mean, Nick Herbig, who has been maybe a top 10 edge rusher in the National Football League since he came back from that hamstring injury, he has been unbelievable, and he only got 28 defensive snaps versus the Bengals. He had 15 less defensive snaps than Chuck Clark last night. I mean, if that doesn't say, mismanagement in terms of your defensive personnel, I don't know what does. All right, Nick Herbig is one of the best pure pass rushers in the National Football League. And to me, this number and these stats right here are unacceptable. All right, you got Chuck Clark, who nobody wanted before the season. He was available during training camp. He's getting 15 more snaps than Nick Herbig, who might be getting $30+ million per season on his next contract because he's playing so goddamn well, especially in a game where fatigue is playing a factor and the Bengals are having the football for long periods of time. We're still not playing Nick Herbig. We're still not getting him into a higher workload in this defense. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And it has nothing to do with TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith. Those guys should absolutely be getting full-time starting reps as well. But Nick Herbig has earned a third of a share of those starting reps between these three edge rushers, and it's just frustrating as hell that this Steelers coaching staff, especially on a short week when you need fresh legs out there, doesn't see it that way. Then, of course, it seems like every single week there is at least one major communication issue in pass defense, and unfortunately this week that big blunder came in the biggest of moments in the fourth quarter when they're trying to drive down and win the football game, and they're playing cover 3 and they don't communicate with, lo and behold, Chuck Clark, who doesn't get the signal to go down and cut the shallow cross from Jamar Chase, leaving him wide open for a 20+ yard gain, setting themselves up for a T. Higgins play in man coverage with Jalen Ramsey in coverage to be able to make that catch and then put themselves in position for a chip shot field goal for the win. The communication issues, it seems like every single week there's a major coverage bust. There's a big mistake made by like Chuck Clark or Darius Slay or one of these other secondary players that just aren't playing well right now, and I'm sick and tired of it, man. The communication issues need to be figured out in the weeks to come, or else it's going to be a long season on the defensive side of the ball here in Pittsburgh. And then I'll just throw this in there. I don't blame the officials for the loss. The Steelers lost this football game, but they certainly didn't help. I mean, Joey Porter Jr., I thought had some very good reps in man coverage, and they flagged it. And I thought it was ticky-tack. I thought they flagged Jalen Ramsey on one where I thought it was very ticky-tack as well. And, the Steelers weren't getting the same calls, plain and simply. And then there was a couple of missed OPI calls. I mean, there was one time where I think it was T. Higgins absolutely abused Darius Slay on a touchdown. I believe it was to Noah Fant on a big third down in this football game. And then there was another one where Jamar Chase just straight up pushes off of Jalen Ramsey, and it's not called. All right. In fact, it's called defensive pass interference, which is an absolute joke. So the officials certainly didn't help, guys. But, there's a reason why we have 10 things on this list. It's not all the officials. Certainly didn't help, gave them some big chunks at times. But, at the end of the day, the Steelers defense needs to play better. Now, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. If you are enjoying today's show, if you love this in-depth, nuanced discussion that we like to do here on Steelers Talk pretty regularly on this channel, especially after Steelers football games, make sure you click that thumbs up icon if you appreciate this kind of content. So now let's talk solutions, all right? I'm not just coming to you guys with problems without ways to fix it, okay? Here are some ways, and I've got 8 things that I would do if I were Tara Lawson or Mike Tomlin that I think can make this defense better moving forward, starting as early as Week 8 versus the Green Bay Packers on Sunday Night Football. All right, so the first thing that needs to be done is the do-your-job mentality has to be emphasized in the run defense. And I think that this is very, very implementable because it's probably already there. All right, I'm sure Chuck Clark, Deshaun Elliott a couple of times, Patrick Queen a couple of times. They're going to be called out in these team meetings for being out of position. And I think that the big thing this week, heading into Packers, especially because they got Josh Jacobs and they got a really good run game, is to fill those gaps. Don't try to do too much, and do what you did versus New England. Do what you did versus Minnesota. Do what you did versus Cleveland, and play gap-sound run defense. We know this team is capable of it. So that just needs to be the message in terms of fixing the run defense. Then, another thing that I would do here, guys, is don't run so many cover one blitzes. I mean, we've been running this cover one style defense this entire season where the Steelers are sending 5 players to the quarterback in pass rush, and then they have one-on-one coverage across the board. But the problem with that, guys, is that this team is not really a good man team. All right, like Darius Slay is not athletically, inclined enough to handle some of these crazy route runners in the league. Same thing goes for Jalen Ramsey in one-on-one coverage, if I'm being completely honest with you guys. Joey Porter Jr. is really the only guy that really thrives in man coverage in this secondary, and Brandon Echols is probably second in that category. So I think the sooner that this coaching staff realizes that this is not a team that is a good man-to-man coverage team, I think the better. And I think the best way moving forward is to do post-snap rotations into zone coverage like most modern defenses do, like Flores does, like McDonald does, like Saleh does. Like there's a lot of these teams that play mostly zone, but they find creative ways to, keep the quarterbacks guessing and rotate different players to different spots. That's the type of defense this Steelers defense should be. And if they can, go to that style of defense, I think they'll have more success than just a straight man-to-man system that they've been mostly running this year. Then we get to my suggestion here, which is I think they should take a page out of Brian Flores' playbook here and Vic Fangio's playbook here and play more man-match coverage. All right, and usually man-match is played from off alignment at corner, so you're not in the face. And what that allows guys like Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey to do is, use their instincts, keep their eyes on the quarterback, follow, the coverage rules, and then stick to the guy that goes into their zone there. So I think that is something that Brian Flores has done extremely well in Minnesota. It's something that Vic Fangio has done really well in Philadelphia. Those are 2 of some of the best defensive play callers in football for a reason, and it's because when taught correctly, those kinds of defenses work extremely well. So I would want to see the Steelers play more quarters and palms, more of these man-match style of defenses. Because I think that Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay in particular are more suited for that style of defense. I mean, Darius Slay won a Super Bowl as a starter for a man-match style defense last year in Philly, and Jalen Ramsey has had some of his best career years in a Fangio-style defense as well in Miami and then, of course, in L.A. So, I just don't think these 2 guys at this stage in their career are built to, go up one-on-one and win consistently. I think we've seen that on tape plenty so far this year. I think that might be the biggest change that this Steelers defense needs to make if they're going to play better in the weeks to come. But that doesn't mean you don't play any man coverage. I would put Joey Porter Jr. on an island in man coverage more. And what I mean by that is I want Joey Porter Jr. on a receiver one-on-one to use his press man ability, okay, because this is what he does. Joey Porter Jr. is not a great zone corner. He doesn't have great technique. He doesn't have great instincts in zone, but what he can do is that he can get in the face of a player and he can shut them down with his long arms, his physicality. He's the only really high-end man corner on this team. So what I would do and how I would address kind of this mismatch of cornerback talent in this Steelers cornerback room is I would put Joey Porter Jr. on an island on a singular receiver on one side of the formation, and then I would rotate the rest of the coverage to the other side of the formation, all right? And I think that this would allow the Steelers to close windows to other receivers, but also take away Joey Porter Jr.'s receiver at the same time. I think that this is some of the best stuff that the Steelers have done on defense over the last several years. We saw it a couple of times last night versus Cincinnati, and it was one of the only times where the defense actually looked good. So I think that this is kind of what's best for the Steelers is you got Joey Porter Jr., one-on-one on his man in press coverage where he can jam and shut them down, and then you got the rest of the defense kind of dispersing to the rest of the area where the other receivers are to try and close windows and play zone coverage the rest of the way. I think that's the best way to set up this Steelers defense, and I'm hoping that Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin agree with me on that. Now, in terms of Jalen Ramsey, what I would do is I would keep him in the slot and at free safety. I know Jalen still wants to, go one-on-one versus, Jackson Smith and Jigba and the Garrett Wilsons and the Jamar Chases of the world. But man, he just has to be a little bit more self-aware and understand he's just not that guy anymore, man. Now he can still be a very valuable player to this defense, and he has to fully embrace the Charles Woodson path at this point, in my opinion. All right, I still think he can be one of the better nickel defenders in the league. He's still a great tackler, great blitzer, great run defender, and then, when he's allowed to play with leverage and have eyes on the quarterback, that's where he's at his best. He is so instinctual, and he can really affect the football game in that way. But if you do what the Steelers do and you just stick him on a man and say, go win one-on-one, and that guy's just more athletic and shiftier than Jalen Ramsey is, that's just not using his skill set in the best possible way. So I would put him in the slot or at free safety and allow him to use his instincts. I think it makes his role and his impact on this defense immediately better. And then also, I would consider playing Brandon Echols over Darius Slay, especially if they want to keep playing a lot of man coverage. Like, Brandon Echols has at least a little bit of juice. He does have that athleticism still with him, and he's got some wheels now. And, he was actually the highest graded corner for the Steelers last night with a 78.8 PFF grade. Now, obviously, PFF grades far from gospel, but, they do get those grades from watching the film, all right? And Brandon Echols is somebody that, as somebody that has watched the film on the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's been one of the more reliable corners for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, even though he's not really listed as a starter. And, that's evidenced by, he has the highest grade for a Pittsburgh cornerback this season with 66.1. Jalen Ramsey is just behind him, but, Brandon Echols has really done a good job ever since he started back in training camp. He's really impressed me, and he's got some wheels, and he can stick with guys in man coverage better than Darius Slay can. So if you want to continue to try and play this man style of defense, I think Brandon Echols has to be the play, and I think that you have to sit Darius Slay down. Now, if you want to keep Slay in there, I would say make some adjustments to the type of defense that you're going to run, because he's just not a man corner anymore. But Brandon Echols has impressed me quite a bit, and he might have earned a starting spot here with another good performance versus the Bengals. And then another thing, guys, this one should be without question. It should have already been done. It's a joke that he even got an opportunity to start last night, but you got to bench Chuck Clark. As long as everybody's healthy, he shouldn't be getting a helmet, and you should be playing Juan Thornhill as the full-time free safety. His ability to come downhill, his ability to identify these short crossers and play aggressively towards them and shut them down, to hit people hard over the middle of the field when they want to throw the ball over the middle. Thornhill, I think, has played some really good ball this season. Hasn't been perfect, but a lot better than Chuck Clark has. And then Jabril Peppers, like when you want another box defender, put him in there. I mean, just having these games where Peppers doesn't play a single defensive snap is just lunacy to me. He's a good football player. Don't just use him on special teams, especially in favor of somebody like Chuck Clark. But then the final way that I would have the Steelers fix this defense is to have a little bit of an even split of reps between the top three edge rushers, all right? Last night, the the Steelers very clearly had an established number one, that was TJ Watt, an established number two, that was Alex Highsmith, and an established number three, that was Nick Herbig. I think they have to get out of that frame of thinking and start thinking of, okay, we got three starting edge rushers that we're going to play pretty darn evenly, because Nick Herbig's just too good of a player to sit on the bench for a majority of the defensive snaps. And honestly, what I would do, guys, is I would put TJ Watt off the field more on later downs, on pass-heavy downs, because he's such a good run defender. I want him out there in those situations. He is just such an impact in that phase of the game, so you got to have him out there on early downs. And I'm not saying take him off the field in big moments all the time, in third and long situations or anything like that. But like Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith are so disruptive as pass rushers. Those are the two guys where, like, if you want to take TJ Watt off the field on a couple of third and longs every single game so that these guys can get some playing time and TJ can stay fresh throughout the game and throughout the season, I'm perfectly okay with Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith getting those kind of later down kind of reps, because Nick Herbig is a little bit lighter, maybe not the best run defender. He's not terrible against the run, but he certainly, I can certainly see the Steelers' stance that he's more of a passing down specialist. So if you want to kind of have TJ Watt, play the early downs and then bring in Nick Herbig at times, I just think that Nick Herbig's too good of a player to not play more at this point, and I would love to see the Steelers coaching staff play these three guys relatively the same amount of snaps over the course of a football game. Now, at the end of the day here, guys, we've talked a lot about this Steelers defense and what's wrong with it, how it can get better, what they need to do to get out of this funk that they're in. But at the end of the day here, man, I really do believe that this team will play better moving forward. It's kind of a weird, Thursday night matchup on the road in a tough spot to play in the division. And, we've seen Philadelphia, the Super Bowl champions, lose to a one-win team, all right, in the New York Giants the week prior. We saw the Los Angeles Rams, one of the best teams in football, in my opinion, lose to Mac Jones and a super injured 49ers team 2 weeks ago on Thursday Night Football. By the way, the Rams were home in that game as well. So weird things happen in division on Thursday Night Football. I think we've seen that, and I think now that the Steelers have a little bit of time here on this mini bye week, I think we're going to see a little bit of a different Steelers defense next week when we play the Green Bay Packers. I hope I'm right on that, but if not, we're always going to be here letting you guys know exactly what went wrong right here on Steelers Talk. So where are you guys at? Let me know down there in the comment section. What is your confidence level in this defense figuring it out this season? Give me a 1 through 10. 1 meaning no confidence at all, to 10 meaning I'm super confident they're going to figure it out. They're going to be just fine. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Now, I know this fan base is down in the dumps right now, but, I just want to end this video on some positivity. Really, we usually do offensive and defensive takeaways in our film kind of breakdowns after games here on Steelers Talk, but we really focus on the defense because the offense is playing really well, all right? The run game is humming. The jumbo personnel packages are working well. The tight ends are playing really well. DK leads the league in receiving touchdowns this year right now. Aaron Rodgers is slinging it. He's making plays out of structure. He's got incredible arm talent. He's tied for the league lead in touchdowns right now. So this offense is absolutely humming. So if this defense can just figure it out a little bit and be competent, this feels like a team that could really make some noise when you really want to be playing your best football in January. And before I go here, I'll actually leave you with a quote from Aaron Rodgers' postgame press conference last night about how, this is a week-to-week league. Shit happens in the National Football League. Bad games happen, but you can't allow yourself to ride the roller coaster, and you got to keep that steady hand. This is what Aaron Rodgers had to say last night. Quote, "We had a chance to really open up some space in the division standings, but we're 4-2, still first in the division, got home games coming up, another Sunday night opponent against my former team. I'm not going to ride the roller coaster, and I know Mike Tomlin isn't. Hopefully you guys, talking about us, the Steelers fans, follow suit." All right, guys, that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk. I know it was a bit of a longer one. Appreciate all the sickos and the psychos that's stuck with me here throughout this really long video. We really went in depth today because there's a lot of issues that the Steelers need to address here in the coming weeks if they want to become the defense that I think we all expected this defense to become. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button to track this team's journey throughout the 2025 season. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.